Who knew that the father of South African botany came from Sweden? In the 1770s, he ventured into uncharted territory, armed not with weapons, but with a plant press. His discoveries would reshape science, influence empire, and redefine how the world understood Africa. Yet today, few remember his name. This is the story of obsession, of a man who catalogued thousands of new plant species, and who also turned his ever-curious gaze on local tribes and the animal kingdom of the Cape. This is the story of Carl Peter Thunberg. Hello, I'm Dr. Philip. Welcome back to Lost History Files. If you enjoy opening these dusty files with me, please like, subscribe and hit the notification bell. And do drop a comment below. Your thoughts and suggestions are always appreciated. Today we continue our mini-series, Vikings on the Veldt, the Scandinavian influence on early South Africa, by focusing on a remarkable Swedish scientist. We all know the wonder and beauty of South Africa's rich flora, but who first brought it to the world's attention? And who went further, carefully studying the region's indigenous peoples and its wildlife? Stay with me as we open the Lost History file on Carl Peter Thunberg. Our story begins in 1743, when Thunberg, in Swedish Thunberg, was born in the Swedish town of Jönköping, a quiet lakeside settlement far from the distant lands he was destined to explore. He had no elite connections to pave his way, yet through talent and hard work, he enrolled at the prestigious Uppsala University when he was 18. This was the intellectual heart of Sweden, a country deeply immersed in the Enlightenment and the scientific method. Here he came under the direct mentorship of the legendary Carl Linnaeus. Linnaeus was no ordinary professor. By the mid-18th century, he was a scientific titan, hailed across Europe as the father of modern taxonomy. His revolutionary system for classifying plants and animals brought order to the chaos of the natural world, and laid the foundation for modern biology. It was Linnaeus who, in 1758, identified man as Homo sapiens. To study under Linnaeus was to learn directly from a master. Being chosen by him as a protégé, as Thunberg was a rare and significant endorsement. Linnaeus wrote, "I have never received more delight and comfort from any other botanist than Thunberg." After 6 rigorous years studying botany, medicine and natural history, Thunberg graduated in 1767. But for a mind as restless and curious as his, Sweden wasn't enough. In 1770, Linnaeus, recognizing his student's potential, encouraged Thunberg to travel abroad. He journeyed to the scientific hubs of Paris, Amsterdam and Leiden, where he formed key friendships with Dutch botanists Johannes Burman and his son Nicholas, both devoted followers of Linnaeus's methods. Eager for exploration, Thunberg set his sights on the Cape of Good Hope, a place teeming with botanical promise. But there was a catch. Access to the Dutch colonies was tightly controlled, and the only path forward lay through service with the Dutch East India Company, the VOC. With help from his Dutch allies, Thunberg, a highly trained physician, secured a position as ship's surgeon aboard the Schoonzicht. In December 1771, he embarked on the first of 2 epic voyages of discovery, far from Europe's libraries and lecture halls, into the heart of an unfamiliar continent. But his story was almost cut short. During the long journey, the ship's cook accidentally mixed the flour used for pancakes with white lead. The result? A mass outbreak of food poisoning. Thunberg and nearly everyone on board barely survived. In March 1772, Thunberg arrived in Cape Town. He was just 30 years old. His journey, scientific, personal and perilous, was only beginning. He had arrived at a pivotal moment in history, when science, exploration and colonial expansion were deeply intertwined. But the harsh realities of frontier life under the VOC quickly became apparent. He was immediately met with isolation and the looming prospect of debt. Thunberg had brought letters of recommendation addressed to Cape Governor Rik Tulbar, himself a keen naturalist, who had once sent plant and insect specimens to Linnaeus. But Tulbar, Thunberg soon learned, had died the previous year, and due to administrative failures, Thunberg received no pay for 2 years. Still, he wasted no time immersing himself in his work. He began frequenting the VOC garden, which he described in typically meticulous detail. The company's garden is always open to the public. It is 996 paces long, 261 broad, and has 44 quarters, which are separated from each other by hedges. Thunberg likely did the methodical pacing himself. After 6 months of finding his feet, it was time for the first of Thunberg's 3 expeditions of discovery at the Cape, from September 1772 to January 1773. His meticulous preparations were a scientific exercise in themselves. He equipped himself thoroughly: clothing, boxes and bags for collecting plants and insects, materials for preserving animals and birds, provisions for himself and tobacco for the khoi, along with firearms and ample ammunition. For transport, he had a saddle horse, a canvas-covered cart similar to an ammunition wagon, and 3 yoke of oxen to pull it through the rugged terrain. He couldn't undertake it all alone, of course. By his side were, in his own words, my travelling companions Johann Auger, the garden superintendent, who was to be my sure and faithful guide, Mr. Emmelman, a youth, the son of a lieutenant in the army, together with Leonardi, a sergeant, and lastly, 2 domesticated Hottentots, the then Dutch name for the khoi. Their route took them far beyond the colonial settlements, from the dry hills north of Saldunya Bay, across the Breda Valley, through the Langkloof, and as far as the Gamtoes River, before circling back via the arid plains of the Little Karoo. The second journey, from September 1773 to January 1774, saw Thunberg venture north again to the mouth of the Breda River, before heading east through the Olifants River to Svelendam, and on as far as the Sundays River. The third and final journey was from September to December 1774. This time, Thunberg and his party travelled north through Piekeneerskloof to the Huntums River, before returning via the Tankvar and Roggeveld Karoo, passing what is now Worcester and Tulbar, and arriving back in Cape Town in late December. Together, these expeditions revealed a continent of untapped biodiversity, scientifically rich, politically complex, and physically unforgiving. The Cape was not only an outpost of the Dutch Empire, but also a treasure trove for any keen naturalist. Thunberg encountered a dazzling range of plant life, vibrant proteas, delicate ericas, hardy succulents, and the unique fynbos vegetation, part of one of the world's 6 floral kingdoms, found nowhere else on Earth. The specimens he gathered during his journeys were initially sent to Leiden's famous botanical gardens, then among Europe's most prestigious. But later, as he rose in academic prominence, much of his collection was consolidated at Uppsala, where it remains a prized scientific archive today. The region's fauna was equally remarkable to Thunberg, from elusive antelope and zebras to vast colonies of insects, birds and reptiles, many of which were unknown to European science. He sketched these creatures himself, capturing minute details essential for accurate classification, though, as with his botanical images, he often collaborated with skilled illustrators to produce the detailed plates that appeared in his books. Indeed, in the very best tradition of scientific inquiry, collaboration was key for Thunberg. He remained in contact with fellow scientists across Europe throughout his time at the Cape, sending notes, seeds and skins to colleagues in Sweden and the Netherlands. Out in the field, too, he wasn't alone in his pursuits. In Cape Town, Thunberg met Francis Masson, a Scottish gardener collecting plants for the Royal Gardens at Kew. Their shared passion for botany forged a quick friendship, and the two embarked on further inland expeditions, joined by Robert Jacob Gordon, a Dutch military officer and self-taught scientist who would become the Cape's last Dutch governor before the British took over. What was Thunberg's method? He wasn't just a collector, he was a meticulous scientist. Every specimen he gathered was carefully noted, classified and compared with Linnaeus' system back in Sweden. Thunberg's notes describe the flora in stunning detail. The shape of leaves, the structure of flowers, the colours, and even the medicinal uses known by local people. He documented the exact locations where each specimen was found, noting soil types, climate conditions, and plant associations. This methodical approach was pioneering for the time and helped shape how scientists study nature today. Beyond taxonomy, his studies hinted at deeper ecological relationships, how plants adapted to the Cape's unique climate, soil and fire cycles. Thunberg's time at the Cape was far more than a routine series of field trips. It was a profound encounter with a land and culture vastly different from Europe, one that would leave a lasting mark on his life and legacy. On these trips, he was as much anthropologist as botanist and zoologist, turning his attention not just to flora and fauna, but also to the people who had long lived on the land, the Khoikhoi. They were the first non-European culture Thunberg had ever encountered, and his reactions were, as was common for his time, a mix of fascination and disquiet. He sometimes expressed discomfort about unfamiliar customs, such as the practice of coating the skin with fat and dust, calling it unclean in his travel notes. Yet even here, we see a glimmer of scientific empathy. Thunberg soon acknowledged the practical genius behind the ritual. It sealed the skin, offering protection from both the summer heat and the winter chill. This willingness to understand rather than judge would define his work. Thunberg became something of a mediator, a bridge between worlds, connecting distant continents, cultures and ideas through the universal language of nature. Unlike some of his contemporaries, he listened to and learned from the Khoikhoi, recognizing their deep generational knowledge of the land. He carefully documented their use of plants for food, medicine and ritual, preserving traditions that might otherwise have been lost. On one occasion, he observed the Khoi making musical instruments, drums, and wrote of the trance-like state they went into with their dancing. On another, he noted how they used the flowering time of irises as a seasonal marker. He observed their arms and implements, and he recorded that, in the eggs of ostriches, as I was informed, a stone was sometimes found which was set and used for buttons. Throughout his studies, Cape life was challenging. Thunberg battled harsh weather, scorching heat, sudden storms. Almost every day, he wrote, we were wet to the skin in consequence of deluging showers of rain. Malaria, dysentery and other illnesses were constant dangers for travellers in the 18th century, and Thunberg was no exception. The rugged terrain was unforgiving. Steep mountains, dense bush and thorny plants challenged every step of his expeditions. On one occasion, his party came across a ferocious and ravenous wild buffalo in a wood so thick that I had room neither to turn my horse around nor to get on one side. I was therefore obliged to abandon him to his fate and to take refuge in a tolerably high tree up which I climbed. Still, Thunberg pushed deeper into the veldt, driven by an insatiable curiosity and commitment to science. Thunberg's writings are an important part of this story. His many discoveries in South Africa would later be immortalised in his 4-volumed work, Travels in Europe, Africa and Asia. The South African portion, Travels at the Cape of Good Hope, was published in 2 volumes in 1793 and 1795. It's one of the earliest and most detailed scientific travelogues of the region. Far more than a botanical catalogue, Thunberg's account captured the landscape, climate, flora and fauna, and the complex social world of the Cape Colony. His descriptions of indigenous customs, colonial life, and natural wonders combined careful hands-on observation with personal reflection, creating a vivid portrait of a land still largely unknown to European readers. Yes, his views sometimes reflect the perspectives of the 18th century, but even so, Travels in South Africa remains one of the most valuable scientific accounts of the era. But Thunberg's journey didn't end at the Cape. In fact, his most unlikely adventure was yet to come, in a land closed off to nearly all outsiders. On the 2nd of March 1775, after his groundbreaking work in South Africa, Thunberg continued his journey eastward, via Batavia to Japan. There, he would earn the epithet of the Japanese Linnaeus. Thunberg's arrival in Japan marked a rare moment of cultural exchange during a period known as Sakoku, Japan's self-imposed isolation from non-Dutch foreign influence for over 2 centuries. As a physician and botanist, Thunberg was granted permission to stay on Jejima Island, a small Dutch trading post off the coast of Nagasaki, but only by passing himself off as a Dutch Protestant. Though confined by strict regulations, Thunberg used this opportunity to observe and document Japanese natural history with remarkable depth and sensitivity. As one of the few Westerners allowed limited access, he became one of the first to document Japan's unique flora and fauna in detail. Thunberg was able to collect 600 species of plants in various forms, dried specimens, seeds, live trees and shrubs, which he sent to his patrons. They could be used for medicinal purposes, to combat disease, and were highly regarded objects of great prestige. Thunberg's studies in Japan broadened European knowledge far beyond the familiar. He meticulously recorded plants used in traditional medicine, agricultural practices, and even cultural rituals, offering rare insights into a society largely hidden from the West. His work helped lay the foundation for future botanical and cultural exchange between Europe and Japan. Thunberg's botanical collections from Japan included species like Prunus cerulata, the iconic cherry blossom, and a variety of medicinal herbs that intrigued European scientists. His published works, including Flora Japonica, helped establish Japan as a significant region of study for naturalists and botanists. This work bridged East and West at a time when such connections were exceedingly rare. On returning to Sweden, Thunberg assumed the role of his now deceased mentor, Linnaeus, Linnaean Chair of Medicine and Botany at Uppsala, a position he held for no fewer than 45 years. He was held in the highest esteem, an honorary member of 66 Swedish and other scientific societies. Thunberg died on the 8th of August 1828 and was buried in the Uppsala Old Cemetery in Sweden. His legacy in South Africa is profound and enduring. He personally collected an astonishing 23,000 plant specimens and 25,000 insects at the Cape alone, now at Uppsala University, and he formally described around 1,900 new plant species, of which about 1,200 are still recognised today under current botanical classification. Numerous plant species bear his name. Let's briefly consider 3. Thunbergia alata, commonly known as the black-eyed Susan vine, is a charming climber with bright, trumpet-shaped flowers marked by a distinctive dark eye. It's widely cultivated for its vibrant colours and vigorous growth, making it a favourite in gardens across the Cape. Thunbergia dreggiana, native to South Africa, boasts large, pale yellow flowers that bloom elegantly against its lush green foliage. This species is less common, but cherished for its subtle beauty and adaptability to local climates. Thunbergia grandiflora, often called the Bengal clockvine, features striking sky blue blossoms with a sprawling vine habit. Though native to tropical Asia, it has been naturalized in parts of South Africa. These species reflect the incredible plant diversity of South Africa, especially the unique Cape floristic region. In universities, botanical gardens and research institutions, Thunberg's name and contributions continue to inspire new generations of scientists dedicated to exploring and preserving South Africa's natural heritage. His story is one of discovery, resilience and connection. From the rugged landscapes of South Africa to the hidden gardens of Japan, his journeys expanded the boundaries of science and bridged cultures separated by continents and centuries. Verdicts on Thunberg the man have not always been kind. One critic called him an obsequious, parsimonious, calculating and ruthless academic operator. Such judgments remind us that even the greatest scientists are not beyond human contradiction. Fair or not, they speak to the complexities behind the legacy. But what is beyond doubt is this. Carl Peter Thunberg, a Swedish Viking on the Veldt, made an incalculable contribution to our understanding of the Cape's natural world.